and Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday indeed. And what a sunny day it is.
It is beautiful.
Beautiful day. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology change, innovation. This week, a bit of painting. I think we're going to focus a bit on what are we doing? AI, reflection on DA Day, but we're going to start with the news, aren't we?
Yeah.
Thanks away, Bell. So we have big news at the moment. So the cyber attacks that have happened this week or the last couple of weeks, I think, from the article, started with Marks and Spencers, and it's now gone on to the Co-op, and Harrods have also said that they've been hit, and yeah, it's causing a lot of angst in those organizations and more. And I've just highlighted the the National Cyber Security Centre has urged retailers to be vigilant.
Bit late.
I mean, they're not, well, burglars. Like, I got this, picture of burglars with a swag bag and a Batman robbing. That's not how they operate.
Yeah. No, it doesn't seem like that's a kind of. It seems like an incredibly generic response, doesn't it? That just be vigilant. Just you'd think the National Cyber Security Centre would have something a bit more specific.
Yeah. Maybe it's a bank holiday weekend, so perhaps they've knocked off early.
They've got the junior PR assistant on it.
Yeah, that'll do. Knock that out. Anyway, 3.8 million spent on clothing products on its website. This is Marks and Spencers every day. And I guess that's been hit along with its share price, which has dropped 2% on Friday morning. It's now down 5% since it kind of announced this kind of IT disruption. So massive incident. And for us in insurance, I guess they're going to have policies, and they'll be working with insurers and their partners to try and rectify this. But I think, well, what I was looking for really was, before doing this story, was whether I could find out kind of any kind of tips or advice or anything that would help, be a bit more helpful than just be vigilant. So what I looked at was a big cyber attack which happened at the British Library a few years ago.
I remember that.
They were basically attacked, and they couldn't access millions and millions of documents, and users' data was compromised, and it was put on the dark web and all this kind of stuff. And this was an update a year on, so marking the anniversary, and they still haven't got all their systems back up. So there were still a number of systems that hadn't been fully restored. So that was 12 months on. What they had tried to do was kind of be open and transparent with it, and written a 6-point kind of guide on the key lessons that they learned. So I thought it'd be quite interesting just to quickly rattle through those. So the first one was to have a clear recovery roadmap. So they had a phased approach. They looked at the high impact services first, and then they kind of they worked back as they kind of restored each one. So there's a phased approach. And then they said communication regularly and transparently was absolutely critical for its members, because otherwise you lose trust, and also you lose control of the story, and you're trying to manage expectations and things like that. So that's important. Third one was to build in redundancy and flexibility. So many of the systems were restored using workarounds, but that then meant that they needed to go back to those workarounds and bring them back into a much more strategic system later on. The next few points I think are more relevant for the London market. So this kind of accelerated a long-term modernization plan that they'd always been working on in the British Library. So the cyber attack really underscored that not having a modern, secure, integrated platform left you open for this type of attack. And you can see similarities with, the Blueprint 2 and what they're trying to do there. The narrative around that is all about cost saving and streamlining, but I think the same could be applied to kind of the security elements of this stuff as well. And the data recovery, this is the next point, the data recovery takes a long time. So this was a year on, and full digital recovery, especially for complex resources like digitized manuscripts and legal deposits, is painstaking. So you can imagine, the types of information that insurers, brokers, and the Lloyd's systems have, they'd be in a similar kind of position if they were compromised. And user support is critical. So bringing people together to do it. But I thought it was quite interesting, not just from a cyber security and products and response point of view, but also from a kind of a market modernization and digitization lens as well. It's quite an interesting kind of case study.
Well, I mean, it shows that these are not just short-term effects once you've had one of these attacks, and I think that would definitely be true of an insurance business because of the sensitive nature of some of the information. Possibly even more so than a banking type hit. And when you're in claims and things like that, so you could, I would, I mean, it's interesting how that data has to be sorted afterwards. And I don't know whether they paid, because there was this question of whether they pay a ransom. I mean, I've done some work on this, and I know that often they do pay the ransom to get the code to unlock it, which I always imagined was right, brilliant, reboot your computer and everything's back to normal. But clearly that's not the way it works.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. In a session that we ran at TinTech London Market, which was looking at, or it might have been London Market Claims, looking at kind of cyber policies and how they responded. I think there was a number of things. So that point about getting the data back, you're right. They don't just unlock it and away you go back to the day before it happened. It's a real mess, and it's all been tampered with, and there's still a lot of bugs in it and all that kind of thing. And the point around paying a ransom, I think that has actually, because they were doing that in the early days, that has actually created a market for more people to get into it, because they went, oh, hang on a minute, we can make a lot of money. So that, I think, in the US is going to be banned, or has been banned, as
Well, there was an argument, wasn't there, that it was, particularly from the hackers themselves, that this was a security measure in itself, in that they were there testing these systems to the extreme, which I always thought was a false argument, because hackers, that's like saying criminals should be encouraged to rob houses to check that your security system works. Well, I tell you what, if there were no criminals, we wouldn't need security systems. So don't encourage criminals. Yes, I mean, I think it was a slightly daft idea, but I guess it's because businesses are pretty desperate when they have this happen. They'd rather pay the money and sort it. It's cheaper, than not doing that.
Especially if you're losing whatever it is, 3 million a day from your website.
Well, and that's the problem. It's in the press, isn't it? And then they're saying today, M&S is still, their online shopping is still not back online. The issue, I guess, with all data is that it's timeliness, and once you've lost that track on the time of things, if you just think of an online shopping which has trucks and vans going out delivering food to people, my wife included, who knows exactly when it arrives because she tells me, and I always say, well, what time's Ocado coming? She says, the same time, 8:30 to 9:30, the same time as it comes every single week, Ben. I said, well, not if it's been hacked.
Yeah.
Actually, they came early this morning. Maybe they were getting in, showing that they'd not been hacked. But they're part. I think they're part of M&S. Anyway, that's I digress. But the point is, isn't it, that data? If you think of something like payroll, for example, which you should never mess with because it's so desperately dependent upon the data all being aligned on the right month and the right time. Quote my wife again. My wife it works in a business where their payroll system went wrong last year. I've mentioned this before. Oh my Lord, what a mess that was. And it went on for 6 months.
Yeah.
And everybody was getting the wrong pay slips because that wasn't a hack. It was just a cock up, basically. But same thing. Yeah. It's horrible, really, to think of it in a large organization. And actually, all procurement now, I learned, is basically to avoid security risk, cyber risk. Most of it is not to do with whether you're, enslaving people or, not putting the right waste paper in the right bin or whatever you get asked on procurement documents when you're onboarding. It's to do with the cyber stuff. Weaknesses.
Yeah, interesting. So we will watch that with great interest, I think, how they handle that. I mean, it's such a massive brand, and it couldn't have happened at a worse time either.
Yeah, be interesting to see what the insurance loss is. I suspect it's not huge. It probably just deals with the shortfall, the short-term issues, not the share price drop or the loss of profit.
Yeah. Mind you, having said that, having bought some stuff from the M&S website, I mean, it was shocking. I mean, we bought something and it took about a year to arrive. I was like,
right.
Oh, right. Okay, brilliant. It was a sofa, but
Well, yeah, they can take a while. Yeah.
Yeah, but a year is excessive, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, yeah. Well, it's good of you to rub it in even more.
I say, and Benson.
Once you're down, get Jeremy in to help you.
Yeah. So while we're at it, Benson's for beds. You can sling your hook as well.
Yeah, no, there is a whole show to be done on why it takes so long to get a cupboard. I have done my 90 kilogram chest of drawers story, which we nearly had a dead delivery driver in our house because it was so heavy.
We should clip that out and put it out. That was good. Excellent. Right. Let us move on. So it was the DA Strategy Day this week. God, it feels like a lifetime ago already, but it was only a few days ago. And we had a few hundred people. Well, it was about 250 people over the course of the day. Richard Clapham there speaking on stage, a few delegates, and Graham Elliott as well from Crux Underwriting. So yeah, it was a really good day. I think last week I put down some of the results of the pre-event survey. So we were looking at digital transformation, data, kind of tech, AI, talent as well. It's good. Operations, border as well. What do you take away from it, Ben? Being
I was going to talk. I mean, it was a really good day. Very buzzy and good for a first conference. Amazing, really, and well done to Tin. I could stay till lunchtime, so I didn't see the talks in the afternoon. So we'll focus on what I got involved with or what I saw. I thought Richard Clapham's talk was excellent. My takeaways were, one, there is a structural problem with it in the sense it's growing very fast, but it's not really being viewed as part of the insurer's proposition yet, which doesn't surprise me. They're seeing it as a cost exercise, and a distribution exercise, cost efficiency, if you like, but it's not really being seen as an investment for the future. And Richard Clapham made a really good point that, it takes 3 to 4 years to get a startup to start to make profit, but the underwriters are taking profit from day one, and therefore that's when the insurer should be investing in it. And I think my sense of that is that he's basically saying, look, if you want to do this, then why don't you do it properly, and why don't you properly invest in something that's a proper fronting operation that really does kind of represent your brand and deliver what it's supposed to deliver. But if you treat it as an administrative, just a point in the supply chain, then it doesn't really work. So I thought that was really good. And he also said something that's probably you and I would love. He just said, you know, I used to understand bordereau, but now I just don't, and I ignore them because they're just so ridiculous, basically. And then there were probably about 3 or 4 sessions on bordereau, weren't there, through the day. Which, but I mean, it's true, and everybody I speak to, I mean, it's a daft word, and we've talked about it before, and but it's. And clearly, and I still, you know, feel that the whole language around the whole DA space is crazy, and that is part of its problem. That masks something that's not right, in a sense, which is that if you can't explain something simply, you know, there must be some problem with the product. There always is, right? There's always something not quite working, and I think so. I thought Richard's speech really laid that out quite nicely. Is invest in the businesses properly, really think about what they are, think about their strategies and your strategy, get the alignment, you know, and then so kind of get serious about it. But it's growing anyway because of necessity, probably, and because the MGAs can turn a profit.
Yeah,
but very, very interesting. We had a good chat on AI, which with Claire Knight's session was good. I thought very good. And I mean, the only thing I'd say is we're still at the very basic foothills of things, and that the discussions in the room really showed that. And we're going to talk about that a bit more in a minute.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, why don't we move on to that? And you're going to do a bit of an explainer, Ben. Are you
yeah, no. Oh my God, here we go.
So agentic AI agents will transform the insurance. I was going to say landscape operation.
Yeah, I thought I'd do this because actually, I you know, there's a lot of this stuff being talked about, agentic AI, Gen AI. We've got a lot of swirling jargon again in the industry, but it's not too. This one, unlike the bond market, is a bit simpler. Thankfully, I think it is anyway. Essentially, this is agentic AI or agent-led AI is kind of different from Gen AI because it really focuses on all the decisions and the goals you've got. So what it's really doing is trying to take the AI and make it fit to a job or a role or a task or a set of tasks. And it's proactive. So it kind of assesses and then does stuff. Unlike, you know, I think when, you know, Gen AI, where you just kind of create content from it, if you like, or you assess content or review it.
Yeah.
So it can carry out fairly complex sequences of activities. So things like searching database or triggering workflows independently. I mean, the claims for them, you know, they can do granular tasks, foster innovation, enhanced reasoning and ability to differentiate information sources. So they're less subject to human error and potentially to the stuff we have talked about with Gen AI, which is hallucination, so error. So they're kind of pulling together various sources. So there's a kind of, you know, creating virtual people, if you like, who pull these things together. Lots of areas where will be applied. So customer service is a big one. So there's companies like ServiceNow, which are really huge in this space, and various other large global organizations doing it. So customer service, resolving queries, call centers, etc., manufacturing processes, sales support, which we talked about a bit on Tuesday, health and social care. So all sorts of things, assisting with procedures. So there's lots and lots of applications for this potentially, but it's still very early. And what it's potentially good about is really you are getting people to work with the AI through this process as well. It's not just a sort of tech solution on its own. And interestingly, I think this was what McKinsey was publicizing with Aviva the other week about its claims review, where it said that the whole review was AI, but it was AI with people. So the whole thing now is to say, well, let's move into making sure that the technology augments or helps what people's jobs are and replaces where it needs to and not where it doesn't. And that's probably quite different from many other tech solutions that have gone previously. I think it's those things have evolved naturally, but they've never really been set out with such intent, I think. So that's kind of interesting. So then you think about, there's a publication called Insurance Thought Leadership, and that has done some work on this. They reckon, this is quite interesting. So they say that 99% of insurers are investing in AI. The LMA came out with a study this week which said that 35% of insurers in London were investing in AI. So there's some questions to be asked about some of the claims here. And then there is another study which is called the International Insurance Society's Global Priority Survey, which said 2/3 of senior executives listed AI as a top priority, up from 55% last year, and a huge increase from 17% in 2021, which is not surprising in and of itself. But the guy who writes the article says that means 1/3 of executives don't think AI is a top priority for innovation. He says. And also that the survey found that concerns over the speed of technological advancement have eased. So this is kind of top executives in insurance all saying, oh, it's probably going to be okay. And he's saying it's I think he's probably right, way too relaxed across the industry. But anyway, the applications for this AI agents are seen, said in this article and these things, that it could be huge. And the point about AI agents, so let's take an example. So you could have an AI agent which applied, worked on a particular type of claim, say a motor claim or something, and they could gather a load of different data for that claim, all sorts of different sources. They could monitor and generate that, continually review the information as the claim progressed, and so on and so forth. And that would work really, really well. Now, that would just be one kind of application, but where the benefits come potentially for the organizations in terms of costs are really when you say, let's just not just have one agent, but multiply that up by hundreds or even thousands. So in other words, you're kind of putting these virtual people into these organizations, and that's really what transforms the business in terms of efficiency and cost. Well, they're talking cost here. I think they're looking at one side of this, the input side of it, rather than whether this can help with customer service and things, because you might actually grow, of course, if people like the product more. So anyway, agentic AI, it's a big thing. It's the next step, I think, in the development of all of this. And it is very interesting because, as I say, I think it just means that very large, well-funded organizations are focusing on how the people work with it. I met with some people yesterday who do quite a lot of work in this area, and they said, though, that in insurance, they're finding that many companies really don't know what to do. They're kind of not even on the page with AI compared with other businesses. And that was US businesses that we're talking about. So there is some, correlation, I think, between this article on that survey and the journalist concerns there and these people I met, which is that insurance isn't picking this up quick enough. Yeah.
So I agree with you about kind of agentic AI kind of being more of a game changer than perhaps Gen AI, because as you've just rightly explained, it's kind of having these kind of discrete agents that are kind of expert in an area, but then can talk to other agents who are experts in their areas and sort stuff out, and they can learn from each other as it goes, as they experience kind of the operation, the process, whatever. We have, I'll just quickly share this. I might as well plug it. But we've got that one off. So we've got a session at TinTech, which is really looking at agentic AI. And the reason I wanted to show you was because so what's interesting is that Mike Downing here at the top, Chief Technology Officer at WPA Healthcare, has actually put in some of these agents. And we heard about them at Data Jam last
Yeah.
October. And since then, in the last 6 months, they've refined and kind of improved the models and the application. So it's now deeper in the organization. And they are, to your point, they are customer facing. So they are not, they're not designed, or they haven't gone out, you know, to cut costs. They've got, how can we deliver a better customer experience, especially in healthcare, which you always think about as, you know, you have to be empathetic and you might be delivering bad news, but actually the gathering of the data, perhaps behind the scenes or even a chatbot or whatever it is, I think that's really interesting, because then when you do get to speak to a human, they're completely tooled up. They know everything about it, what's covered, the history, the phone, just everything. And then you deliver the, you know, the best experience that you can. So I think it's going to be super interesting to hear that that case study, and kind of just, I suppose, challenge the industry and go, well, where else could this be used? This kind of.
I think it's right. It's very interesting. I mean, I wonder really, when you look at the specialty market, I think that there are some challenges around the skill sets and the people, not just the technology. And I think it may well be, to me, it's very interesting to ask about, say, a healthcare business, where I imagine, I may be wrong, that there is more of a customer direct facing element within that business than you often get, say, within a specialty London market insurer and claims, for example, where they often don't meet the customers or rarely do. I think that there we've got challenges around getting people up to speed, and I think this is probably partly true of the session we did at the conference at the DA day on Tuesday, was that people were saying we don't really know whether to jump in or not jump in and so on. But we are 2.5 years in now to this, and it does look to me like there's not that much adoption. There's a lot of in the London market, if we look at that, and there's not as much going on as there probably should be, as there is in other industries, for example. I think we have a quite old-fashioned group of people generally across the senior levels of the industry who will tend to pick up the, you know, and I come from a kind of was a cynic about this, but now I think we better get onto this. They're kind of picking up the high level message, but what they're really focusing on is the negatives. Yeah, but we ought to be cautious, and we ought to be cautious. So they're the cup half empty people more than the cup half full. Let's get on with it. And I think this is a moment when, you know, the industry has to get onto this. And I don't think we've got the skills in place. So how AI ready are many of these businesses? I think not very, would be my view.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting at TinTech to see how much the conversation has moved on, even since you know, Data Jam and TinTech London Market in February. You know, it's just quite amazing how much it can enable innovation in organizations if you're allowed to kind of use it. Anyway, it's
well, there's so many people, so many industries using it. There's so much investment going in, not just from the AI companies, but now from businesses. So many people, individuals, you know, as I said before, you know, you're going to get the odd genius coming up with a new brilliant idea. Even the other thing I think it's driving is not just what you might call actual AI, but also just automation conversations in general, because I think it's pulling that along on its coattails, which is, well, trouble, because AI might come in with one of your competitors, you better automate stuff that's not currently automated. And I think that's driving technological investment as well. So the whole thing is ramping up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Right. Well, obviously we'll be keeping track of that. Certainly I will be. Right, Ben. Let's switch things into culture. You've brought some art along, a bit of show and tell. Am I bringing?
Well, I did earlier.
Am I bringing up the Lloyd's portrait?
Yeah, bring out the portrait. Bring up the portrait.
Here is a picture of looks like the Lloyd's Library. Is that right?
It is the Lloyd's Library. They are all looking at one man, really. Who is?
It on first glance, because it's quite a small picture on my screen, it looks like George W. Bush. But I think it is Bruce Carnegie Brown.
It is.
Yeah.
So it's Bruce. It's a tribute to Bruce Carnegie Brown's time as chairman, and it's the next in the line of portraits that have been done by an artist, commissioned artist, who has done, and you can see some of them. So they've moved on from the more traditional kind of portraits that are up in the library, or were up, or still are some of them, into these kind of more forward-looking, I suppose. I think you'd call them types
I think it looks very weird.
Do you think so?
I think it looks like, honestly, if you said this,
well, that's what I was going to ask you, just to say what you feel about it. I approach this with some trepidation because, you're going to say things that you just come straight from the gut, aren't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, of course I am. So, if you show me this and said, "Oh, yeah, this was a black and white photograph or image that has been restored into color, and it's taken around 1910," I'd be going, yeah, that looks good.
Yeah,
that's probably about right. Lots of people looking at one person in kind of admiration and awe, with lots of props and symbolism, and there's a sword in there, and there's a great big book, and there's buildings and clocks and all sorts of gubbins. Not many computers or AI related stuff. But yeah, that's why I'm saying.
No, you're right. That's true. You're right.
It looks antiquated, I would say.
Do you think? I'll tell you in a minute. What he said. I mean, it's kind of an odd. It's obviously it's set up, isn't it?
Yes, it's very staged.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, this guy, the chap who's done it, if you move it on, is called Franklin Rogers, and there he is. And I have met Franklin Rogers because he asked me to comment on the art when I came out of the Lloyd's Library after an event one day, which is a bit unfair since he was the artist. What was I going to say? Bloody terrible, mate. I didn't. I said it was interesting and quite interesting. So what do I think? I mean, what he says is it's a portrait of Lloyd's of London's outgoing chairman, Bruce Carnegie Brown, in a democratic, innovative, and future-focused portrait that represents himself and the current serving members of the Lloyd's Council. The Conversation it's called The Conversation, has been a project of incredible depth and another innovative first for Lloyd's, breaking from the long-standing custom of a single painted portrait. And it demonstrates collective leadership. So it is, I think, reasonably diverse. Although, is anybody not wearing a kind of rather conservative suit and tie, or trainers, or whatever? No. Whether they were allowed to go that far in the Lloyd's Library. So you're right. It does feel, at first glance, it feels quite like almost like kind of one of those. It's kind of, I called it a bit of a throwback portrait because it feels like a throwback to a kind of historical thing of those pictures you get of Parliament. Yes. The moment when war was declared, and you've got a Chamberlain or somebody with his note from, Hitler or something, and it feels like one of those things. So it does feel quite, to me, you know, of a style that isn't necessarily, you know, that new. I mean, I'm not critical of that. It just is a style, I think, that's been used before. So it's quite derivative, I think, of some other styles.
Yeah.
It's a sumptuous he says it's a photographic portrait, right? So it's not a painting, it's a photographic portrait. So I do photography. I think the lighting is good and really nice. I think the colors are good. I think it's done in such a way to create that feel. And I think it's supposed to make you question, isn't it? Is this from the late 19th century, or is this 2025? But it doesn't make me think it's 2025.
No.
In fact, it pushes it back a bit for me. So it may not have gone far enough. I don't know. It's interesting. Some more things he said. So it's a sumptuous representation of the diversity in Lloyd's marketplace. Well, it isn't diverse. One, I don't mind. I don't mind saying that. I mean, it isn't diverse. So, you know, this group is sort of diverse, but is it really? It looks quite.
They all look pretty old to me, and
they all look pretty old, well-heeled. You know, not as diverse. It doesn't give me necessarily, to me, that feeling of diversity as perhaps as much as it should. And I'm not blaming the artist. I think the artist probably had constraints on this. You know, I imagine. We've been bold and symbolic in approach and process, reflecting on the importance of collective leadership through diversity, inclusion, innovation, bravery, and sustainability. Not sure where the sustainability is. Working within the tradition of Lloyd's to build bridges informed by the aesthetics of the past, but in a narrative firmly grounded in the present and the context speaking to future possibilities. Does it say that to you?
No, I don't. It doesn't. None of this says anything. It just doesn't. It just looks like an old painting to me. It looks like, just like I say, it looks like a photograph that's been brought into the modern day from, like you said. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it is a beautiful piece of art, but in terms of the meaning that you've just been reading out, I mean, it looks to me like they're all kind of looking to him as being the leader. They're almost like on bended knee.
Yes, there's a certain amount of what is called hagiography, you know, making him into look a bit like a godlike, Jesus-like figure here, isn't there? Yeah. Like he's the all-knowing being, or you know. And I think that's what slightly throws me about this, is everybody's looking to him as if he's, which is fine if he was, you know, I don't know, George Washington or something, you know. Yeah. I don't think he is George Washington, and I don't think the achievements in Lloyd's justify that sort of feeling. I think it's, you know, it maybe says more about the feeling that they have about themselves as a group of people than it says about this. But I'm not sure. I'd love to show this to some young people in the market and see what they think of it. Yeah. I mean, you know, everybody's very polite, but art's there to be critiqued, isn't it? I mean, I mean, if people listen to this, if the artist listens to this, I mean, my message is, as yours, it's very beautiful, but I think we could go Lloyd should go much further on its looking diverse and future focused, not to be literal with you know bloody computers in the front or anything. I mean, but just, you know, pull it even further into that. And to be fair to the artist, there are some, you know, some interesting portraits. You know, there's a trans person there. There's the first black person elected to the council. All those sorts of things are good. And I think those are symbolic. And I said that when I met him, that I think those are really good things to focus on. But this, don't know, it feels to me like a bit of, they don't look like they're under any pressure. They don't look like they're worried or concerned, or, you know, this looks like we're just so smug and happy with everything, and our leader's so brilliant. He's been such a force of change. And come on, Blueprint 2 hasn't happened. The modernisation of the market hasn't happened. Lloyd's market is shrinking. They've lost most of the reinsurance to Bermuda. I mean, let's face up to some reality. I don't know. I feel a bit mixed about it. I like it as a piece of art, but it just jars with what Lloyd's is and, where it is in the world. And this partly is because I don't ever know really what the proposition for Lloyd's is, and it's not clear to me what its brand is. But yeah,
there we go. So that's the Ben and Jeremy do art. Next week we'll be doing Rembrandt.
I think we should do Rembrandt. Yes, that'll be good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not critical of the art and the actual piece of work. I think that looks great in lots of ways. It's beautiful, but I don't know. It's funny when one thing I would just add to it is, does this in 50 years' time say something to people? When we're dead and gone, will people be going, that really was a moment of change and this picture's captured it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I was going to say we'll have to wait and see, but
we won't.
We won't.
We'll be looking down from above, doing the Burgess and Bolton in heaven or hell.
Yeah. Right. On that happy note, what are you doing this weekend?
It's bank holiday weekend, isn't it? So it's a bit of, because it's nice, barbecue. I've already bought the barbecue stuff, so yeah, a bit of that. I've got some friends coming, walks, that sort of stuff. Yeah, should be good.
Nice. I think I'm on childcare duty this weekend because my wife's working. But
okay,
should be good fun. Went fishing last weekend, so that was good.
Did you catch anything?
I did. Yeah, we go to the lake, so it's quite, it's carp fishing, so it's quite good.
Yeah.
Every 20 minutes or so, there's something happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's a beautiful spot. I mean, it's so nice to be outside, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. That's exactly right. Yes, that's exactly right. And I will be going to the recycling centre as well.
It's just
in the sunshine, beautiful.
Yeah,
Canterbury Recycling Centre. I can highly recommend it.
So our recycling centre is Toville, and we went at Christmas. And what they do at Christmas is that they get all the Christmas decorations that have been thrown away, and they decorate the whole place. And I've got a picture of it because I couldn't believe it. There were thousands of Santa Claus, plastic Santa Clauses, and Rudolphs. And it was an amazing display.
Yeah. That's a great portrait. That's what we want. Some of that stuff. Yeah, the modern, the icons of the current period. Yeah,
modern day tip. It's brilliant.
I think tips do have a bit of that, don't they? Because they grab out things. When you look at it, you go, yeah, that. So a tip in 1950 will be different from a tip in 2025, won't it?
Yeah,
there'll be different things, and just different rubbish, basically, and then some of the same rubbish, I guess, as well. Yeah. Mine's a crushing tip.
Ooh.
The new one. It crushes everything. I mean, it literally crushes everything.
I might have to go and visit that. Sounds good.
It's good. It makes me think of whether I would put people in I don't like into the crushing machines.
Like on Pulp Fiction, crush the car.
Yeah, well, I had a slight fantasy about, these just crush everything, these machines. There's one for large objects, and I thought there's a few people I could take there, large objects themselves, and say, right, apologize. Apologize, you're getting the large object crusher, mate.
That's it. The Trump presidency has not impacted your personality at all.
No, I'm not. I'm not woke in that way at all. I'm, if crusher works, crusher will be the way.
That's it. Right is right.
Crush, baby, crush.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will have a lovely bank holiday weekend, and we will see you next week for more of the same.
Yeah. Hi. Have a happy bank holiday weekend, everybody. Bye.
Goodbye.